Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're diving into a heartbreaking story that has shocked Hollywood and the therapy community. This is the tragic tale of Dr. Amie Harwick, a renowned therapist, and her untimely death. Before we begin, I want to issue a trigger warning as this story involves sensitive topics. Let's get started. Dr. Amie Harwick was so much more than just a headline or a victim. She was a force of nature in her field. A licensed marriage and family therapist, she specialized in sex therapy and was a published author. Her book, The Sex Bible for Women, was a testament to her dedication and expertise. She was the kind of therapist who didn't just listen, she empowered her clients, helping them navigate the complexities of relationships and intimacy. But Amie wasn't just a therapist, she was a daughter, a friend, and a partner. She had a vibrant personality that could light up a room. Her smile was infectious, and her compassion knew no bounds. She was the kind of person who made you feel seen, truly seen, for perhaps the first time in your life. Her relationship with comedian Carey brought her into the public eye, but she was a star in her own right, a professional who was deeply respected in her community. They were once engaged, and although they eventually parted ways, Carey spoke highly of her, a testament to the kind of person she was. Yet, despite all her accomplishments and the lives she touched, her own life was tragically and abruptly cut short. It's a loss that has left a gaping hole in the hearts of those who knew her and the field she so passionately contributed to. The shockwaves of her untimely death reverberated through Hollywood, the therapy community, and beyond, leaving everyone who heard her story stunned and heartbroken. The night of February 15, 2020, started like any other for Dr. Amie Harwick. She was in her Hollywood Hills home, a sanctuary she had built for herself. But that sanctuary would soon turn into a scene of unimaginable horror. Around 1:16 a.m., LAPD officers received a chilling radio call. The words "woman screaming" echoed in their ears as they rushed to the 2000 block of Mound Street in Hollywood Hills. When they arrived, the atmosphere was thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. They found Dr. Harwick unresponsive, lying on the ground beneath her third-floor balcony. The officers' hearts sank as they realized the gravity of the situation. Despite their best efforts and immediate medical attention, Amie was slipping away. She was rushed to a local hospital, but it was too late. The woman who had spent her life healing others couldn't be saved. The lapsed subsequent statement was a grim read, outlining the horrifying details. The autopsy report would later confirm what many had feared. Amie had suffered blunt force injuries to her skull and body from the fall. But there was more. The term manual strangulation was also noted by the Lake County Medical Examiner coroner, adding another layer of horror to an already gruesome scene. That night, a life full of promise and love was snuffed out, leaving a community in shock and a field of therapy forever lacking one of its brightest stars. The events of that fateful night are not just a series of timestamps or police codes. They mark the tragic end of a life that had so much more to give. The LAPD knew they had no time to waste. Dr. Amie Harwick's autopsy results had just come in, and they were as shocking as they were heartbreaking. It wasn't just the fall from her third-floor balcony that had caused her death. There were also unmistakable signs of manual strangulation. This revelation sent a shiver down the spines of the investigators. It was clear this was no accident. It was a cold-blooded murder. The spotlight immediately turned to Gareth Pursehouse, Amie's former boyfriend. But why him? Well, the history between Amie and Gareth was fraught with tension and red flags. In fact, Amie had once filed a restraining order against him, a detail that now loomed large over the investigation. The police had to act fast. Every tick of the clock was a reminder that a potential killer was still at large. The urgency was palpable, the stakes sky high. Officers scoured through evidence, piecing together a timeline that would lead them to Gareth. They examined phone records, sifted through security footage, and conducted interviews, all while the clock continued to tick. Finally, they had enough to make an arrest. Gareth Pursehouse was taken into custody, but the case was far from closed. The investigators knew they had a mountain of evidence to sift through and a prosecution case to build. But for that brief moment, there was a collective sigh of relief. One less predator was on the streets, and perhaps, just perhaps, there could be justice for Dr. Amie Harwick. Gareth Pursehouse wasn't just a name in a police report. He was a haunting presence in Dr. Amie Harwick's life. To understand the gravity of his involvement, we have to go back to 2012. That was the year Amie felt compelled to file a restraining order against him. A legal document, yes, but also a desperate cry for safety, a boundary set against a man she once knew intimately but grew to fear. The restraining order had expired, but the emotional scars it represented were indelible. And then, as if fate had a cruel sense of humor, they crossed paths again. Not in a casual setting, but at an adult film industry event. The encounter was described as chance. But was it really? Could such a meeting ever be coincidental when dealing with a man who had a history of obsession? In the weeks leading up to her tragic death, Amie and Gareth had been in contact. What was the nature of this contact? Was it reconciliation, or was it a ticking time bomb of unresolved tension? These are questions that would later become focal points in the investigation. Gareth was more than just an ex-boyfriend. He was a looming shadow, a man whose past actions cast doubt on his intentions. And now, he was the prime suspect in a case that had gripped the nation, a case that had stolen a life and shattered countless others. In the immediate aftermath of Dr. Amie Harwick's tragic death, the LAPD wasted no time. Gareth Pursehouse was arrested, and for a moment, it felt like the first step toward justice. But then, the unimaginable happened. Gareth was released on a staggering $2 million bond. The community was in shock, and a sense of unease permeated the air. Could it be that he would walk free? But justice had a different plan. Gareth was rearrested, this time on a no-bail warrant. It was as if the universe itself had course-corrected, pulling him back into the clutches of the law. From that moment, he was confined to a cell, no longer able to roam the streets or potentially harm anyone else. The rearrest wasn't just a procedural step. It was a collective sigh of relief for those who loved Amie and for a community that had been holding its breath. Yet, it also raised questions. Why was he released in the first place? What led to the no-bail warrant? These questions added layers of complexity to an already convoluted case. Since that fateful rearrest, Gareth has been held in county jail, a stark contrast to the freedom he briefly tasted. It was a grim but necessary chapter in this harrowing saga, a step closer to answering the agonizing question: who killed Dr. Amie Harwick? The world had been waiting, holding its collective breath, as the trial of Gareth Pursehouse was repeatedly postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The tension was palpable, like the air before a storm, as the trial finally commenced on August 29. The courtroom was a sea of anxious faces, each person grappling with their own thoughts and emotions about the case. In a move that stunned everyone, the defense chose not to present a case. It was as if they had thrown in the towel before the fight had even begun, leaving many to wonder what strategy, if any, they had in mind. Was it arrogance or a silent admission of guilt? The atmosphere was thick with speculation and unanswered questions. Then came the moment of reckoning. After just 7 hours of deliberation, a period that felt both agonizingly long and shockingly short, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The words echoed in the courtroom, each syllable a hammer blow to any lingering doubts about Gareth's involvement in Dr. Amie Harwick's tragic death. The verdict wasn't just a legal conclusion. It was an emotional release, a cathartic moment for those who had been following the case. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted, revealing a sky that, while not entirely clear, offered a glimmer of justice and closure. Yet, even as the gavel came down, sealing Gareth's fate, the room was filled with a complex mix of relief, sorrow, and lingering questions. Could anything really compensate for the loss of Dr. Amie Harwick? The answer was complicated, but for that brief moment, justice had been served. With the jury's verdict, Gareth Purshouse's fate was sealed. He now faces a life sentence without the possibility of parole. It's a chilling end to a chilling story. The prosecution had a daunting task. They needed to prove both intent and malice to secure a first-degree murder conviction. And they did. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, a silence filled with a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing that while justice may have been served, it could never bring back Dr. Amie Harwick. The ripple effects of this case extend far beyond the courtroom. Dr. Amie Harwick's absence has left an irreplaceable void in the lives of her family, friends, and the community she served. Her death also shines a spotlight on the glaring inadequacies in our system when it comes to protecting victims of stalking and domestic violence. How effective are restraining orders, really, when a piece of paper couldn't save Amie's life? It's a haunting question that calls for immediate action and reform. Thank you for joining me on this deeply unsettling journey through the life and tragic death of Dr. Amie Harwick. This case serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the system we trust to protect us falls devastatingly short. Lives are lost, and the questions that remain are both a burden and a call to action. If this story has touched you as it has me, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any future true crime stories. Until we meet again, please stay safe and take care of each other.